The rain hammered against the windows of the military hospital as Sarah Martinez adjusted her nurse's cap for the third time that morning. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from exhaustion. She had been working double shifts for 2 weeks straight, covering for colleagues who had fallen ill with the flu that was sweeping through the base. At 24, Sarah was one of the youngest nurses on staff at Fort Bradley Military Medical Center. She had joined the Army Nurse Corps fresh out of nursing school, driven by a desire to serve her country and help wounded soldiers. What she hadn't expected was the constant battle against prejudice and dismissal from some of the older, more established medical staff. "Martinez," barked Colonel James Harrison as he strode down the hallway. His voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 30 years in the military, climbing through the ranks with determination and political savvy. "Where's the morning report on the surgical ward?" Sarah looked up from the medication cart she was preparing. "Sir, I submitted it to Dr. Peterson's office 20 minutes ago, as requested." Harrison's eyes narrowed. He was a tall man with graying hair and a permanent scowl that seemed etched into his weathered face. As the hospital's chief administrator, he ran the facility with an iron fist, brooking no dissent or deviation from protocol. Unfortunately for Sarah, he had taken an immediate dislike to her from her first day on the job. "I didn't ask when you submitted it," Harrison snapped. "I asked where it is. Dr. Peterson says he never received it." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She distinctly remembered walking to Dr. Peterson's office and handing the report directly to his secretary, Mrs. Williams. "Sir, I can check with Mrs. Williams. I gave it to her personally." "Are you suggesting that Dr. Peterson is lying?" Harrison's voice rose, causing several other staff members to look in their direction. "No, sir, I'm simply stating what happened. Perhaps there was a miscommunication." Harrison stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. "Listen carefully, Martinez. This hospital operates on precision and accountability. If you can't handle the basic responsibility of delivering a simple report, perhaps you're not cut out for military medicine." Sarah's cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger, but she maintained her composure. "I understand, sir. I'll look into it immediately." "You do that, and Martinez, this is your first and final warning. One more screw-up, and you'll find yourself transferred to the most remote posting we can arrange." As Harrison stalked away, Sarah's colleague, Lieutenant Jenny Brooks, approached with a sympathetic expression. Jenny was a few years older and had been at Fort Bradley for 3 years. She had witnessed Harrison's treatment of Sarah on multiple occasions. "Don't let him get to you," Jenny whispered. "Everyone knows he's been trying to push you out since day one." "But why?" Sarah asked, genuinely confused. "I work harder than anyone here. My patient care scores are among the highest in the hospital." Jenny glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Because you're young, smart, and you don't kiss up to him like some of the others do. Plus, there are rumors that his nephew applied for a nursing position here and didn't get it. He thinks you took a spot that should have gone to family." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm began blaring throughout the hospital. The distinctive pattern indicated incoming casualties, serious ones. Both nurses immediately shifted into emergency mode, their personal conversation forgotten. "All medical personnel to Trauma Bay," came the announcement over the intercom. "Multiple casualties incoming, ETA 10 minutes. Sarah and Jenny rushed toward the Trauma Bay, joining a stream of doctors, nurses, and technicians. As they prepared the emergency equipment, word filtered through about the incident. A military convoy had been attacked during a training exercise. An IED had exploded, causing multiple injuries ranging from minor cuts to life-threatening trauma. Dr. Amanda Chen, the head of emergency medicine, quickly organized the teams. Sarah found herself assigned to Trauma Bay 3, working under Dr. Michael Rodriguez, one of the hospital's most skilled surgeons. Despite his reputation for being demanding, Dr. Rodriguez had always treated Sarah with professional respect. The first helicopter landed on the roof, and within minutes the casualties began arriving. Sarah's first patient was a young private, barely 18 years old, with severe burns on his arms and face. His name tag read Wilson, and his eyes were wide with pain and fear. "It's going to be okay," Sarah told him, her voice calm and reassuring despite the chaos around them. "You're safe now. We're going to take good care of you." As she began cleaning and assessing his wounds, Private Wilson grabbed her hand. "Am I going to be okay? I can't feel my left arm." Sarah looked at his injuries carefully. The burns were serious but not life-threatening. However, there appeared to be nerve damage from shrapnel. "The doctors are going to examine you thoroughly," she said honestly. "Right now, let's focus on managing your pain and getting you stable." For the next 4 hours, Sarah worked tirelessly. She assisted with 3 major surgeries, coordinated care for 7 patients, and managed to keep detailed records despite the overwhelming pace. Her training and natural instincts kicked in, and she found herself anticipating needs before they arose. During a brief break, Dr. Rodriguez pulled her aside. "Outstanding work today, Martinez. Your patient assessment skills are exceptional, and your bedside manner is exactly what these soldiers need." "Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing much more than that. I've been practicing medicine for 15 years, and I can recognize natural talent when I see it." Colonel Harrison appeared suddenly, as if materializing from thin air. "Dr. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you about staffing allocations for next month." Dr. Rodriguez nodded but continued his conversation with Sarah. "Martinez, I'm recommending you for advanced trauma certification. You've earned it." Harrison's expression darkened. "Dr. Rodriguez, surely there are more experienced nurses who would be better candidates for advanced training." "With respect, Colonel, I choose my recommendations based on merit and performance. Nurse Martinez has demonstrated exceptional skills under pressure." "I see," Harrison's tone was icy. "Well, we'll discuss this in my office later." As Dr. Rodriguez walked away, Harrison turned his attention to Sarah. "Don't think one good day makes up for your previous incompetence." "Colonel, if I may ask, what specifically have I done wrong? My patient satisfaction scores are—" "Don't question my judgment, Martinez. I've been running this hospital since before you were out of diapers." Sarah felt her patience finally snap. The stress of the day, combined with weeks of unfair treatment, pushed her beyond her usual diplomatic restraint. "Sir, I've been nothing but professional and dedicated since arriving here. If you have specific concerns about my performance, I'd appreciate concrete examples rather than vague accusations." Harrison's face turned red. "How dare you speak to me like that? You're out of line, Martinez." "I'm standing up for myself, sir. Something I should have done weeks ago." "Report to my office at 800 tomorrow. We'll discuss your future here, which I suspect will be very brief." As Harrison stormed off, Sarah realized she might have just ended her career at Fort Bradley. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of pride in herself for refusing to be intimidated. The next morning arrived gray and cold. Sarah had spent most of the night reviewing regulations and preparing for what she assumed would be a disciplinary hearing. She dressed carefully in her dress uniform, making sure every detail was perfect. At precisely 800, she knocked on Colonel Harrison's office door. "Enter," came his gruff voice. Sarah stepped inside and stood at attention. "Nurse Martinez reporting as ordered, sir." Harrison looked up from his paperwork with a satisfied smirk. "Ah, Martinez, I've been looking forward to this conversation." Before he could continue, his secretary's voice came through the intercom. "Colonel, there are 3 gentlemen here to see you. They say it's urgent." Harrison frowned. "I'm in a meeting. Tell them to make an appointment." "Sir, they're generals. They're insisting on seeing you immediately." The color drained from Harrison's face. "Generals? What generals?" "General Morrison, General Webb, and General Foster, sir." Sarah recognized the names immediately. These weren't just any generals. They were among the highest-ranking officers in the entire military medical command. General Morrison was the Surgeon General of the Army. General Webb commanded all military hospitals on the East Coast. General Foster was known as one of the most decorated combat medics in military history. "Send them in immediately," Harrison stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. The door opened, and 3 men in dress uniforms entered. Each wore stars on their shoulders and carried themselves with the bearing of men accustomed to command. Harrison immediately shot to his feet and snapped to attention, as did Sarah. "Colonel Harrison," General Morrison said, his voice carrying quiet authority, "we need to talk." "Of course, sir. Would you like me to?" "We're here about Nurse Martinez," General Webb interrupted, glancing at Sarah with what appeared to be approval. Harrison's confusion was evident. "Sir, I was just about to discuss disciplinary action." "Were you?" General Foster asked. his tone suggesting that would be a very poor decision. General Morrison stepped forward. "Colonel, are you aware that yesterday's casualty response has been reviewed by the Pentagon?" "No, sir, I wasn't aware of any review." "The entire operation was recorded as part of a new training assessment program. We've spent the night analyzing the footage and medical records from yesterday's emergency." General Webb opened a folder he was carrying. "In particular, we've been studying the performance of individual medical personnel during the crisis." "Nurse Martinez," General Foster said, turning to face her directly, "your actions yesterday were nothing short of exemplary." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Sir." General Morrison continued, "Your rapid assessment of Private Wilson not only saved his arm, but likely saved his life. The nerve damage you identified was missed by 2 other medical professionals who examined him first. Your coordination of care for multiple critical patients simultaneously demonstrated a level of skill we rarely see in officers with twice your experience," added General Webb. General Foster smiled slightly. "Your bedside manner, your clinical skills, and your leadership under pressure have been noted at the highest levels of military medicine." Harrison stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape. This was clearly not the direction he had expected the morning to take. "Colonel Harrison," General Morrison said, his tone becoming more serious, "we understand there have been some personnel issues in this hospital." "Personnel issues, sir?" "Don't play dumb, Colonel. We've received reports about the treatment of certain staff members. Reports that suggest personal bias may be affecting professional decisions." General Webb stepped closer to Harrison's desk. "We've also reviewed staffing decisions, duty assignments, and performance evaluations from the past 6 months. Some patterns have emerged that concern us greatly." "In particular," General Foster added, "we're troubled by reports that exceptional personnel are being threatened with transfer or disciplinary action based on personal conflicts rather than professional performance." Harrison's face had gone from red to pale white. "Sirs, I can explain." "No explanation necessary," General Morrison cut him off. "We've seen enough. Nurse Martinez, please step outside for a moment. We have some administrative matters to discuss with Colonel Harrison." Sarah glanced between the generals and Harrison, then snapped to attention. "Yes, sir." As she reached for the door handle, General Webb called out, "Oh, and Martinez, don't go far. We'll want to speak with you again shortly." Sarah stepped into the outer office, her mind reeling. Mrs. Williams, Harrison's secretary, looked up with wide eyes. "I've never seen anything like that," Mrs. Williams whispered. "3 generals showing up unannounced, and they seem to think very highly of you." Through the closed office door, Sarah could hear muffled voices, though she couldn't make out specific words. The tone, however, was clear. Colonel Harrison was receiving what sounded like a very serious reprimand. After 20 minutes, the door opened. General Morrison emerged first, followed by the other 2 generals. Harrison trailed behind them, looking like a man who had just received the worst news of his life. "Nurse Martinez," General Morrison called, "would you join us, please?" Sarah re-entered the office. Harrison avoided eye contact, staring instead at his desk with a defeated expression. General Webb spoke first. "Nurse Martinez, effective immediately, you're being reassigned." Sarah's heart sank. Despite the general's earlier praise, it seemed Harrison had gotten his way after all. "You'll be transferred to Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C., General Foster continued, "where you'll serve as a trauma specialist in our premier military medical facility." Sarah's eyes widened. Walter Reed was the most prestigious military hospital in the country. "Additionally," General Morrison added, "you're being promoted to captain effective immediately. Your advanced trauma certification has been approved and expedited." "Furthermore," General Webb said with a slight smile, "you'll be enrolled in our accelerated officer development program. We have big plans for your career, Captain Martinez." Sarah struggled to find words. "Sir, thank you, I'm honored." "You've earned it through your dedication and exceptional performance," General Foster assured her. General Morrison turned to Harrison. "Colonel, you'll receive written orders regarding the changes we've discussed. I trust there will be no issues with implementation." Harrison finally looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, sir, no issues." As the generals prepared to leave, General Webb paused at the door. "Captain Martinez, your transport to Walter Reed leaves this afternoon. Pack light, everything else will be provided." After the generals departed, Harrison and Sarah stood alone in the office. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Harrison spoke. "I suppose you think you've won." Sarah considered her response carefully. "No, sir. I think the Army's system worked the way it was supposed to. Merit and performance were recognized over personal bias." Harrison's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Maybe not, sir. But I do know that every soldier who comes through these doors deserves the best care we can provide, regardless of whether their nurse happens to be someone you like personally." For a moment, Harrison looked like he might explode. Then suddenly his shoulders sagged. "Get out of my office." Sarah snapped to attention one final time. "Yes, sir." As she walked through the hospital corridors for the last time, word of her promotion had already spread. Fellow nurses congratulated her, doctors shook her hand, and even some of the patients she had treated wanted to say goodbye. Dr. Rodriguez found her packing her few personal belongings. "I heard the news. Congratulations, Captain." "Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Your recommendation meant a lot." "You earned it. Walter Reed is getting one of the finest nurses I've ever worked with." As Sarah finished packing, she reflected on the morning's extraordinary events. Just hours ago, she had been facing disciplinary action and possible dismissal. Now she was a captain in the Army Nurse Corps, heading to the most prestigious medical facility in the military. Jenny Brooks appeared at her door. "I can't believe it, 3 generals. Do you know how that happened?" Sarah shook her head. "I have no idea. They mentioned reviewing footage from yesterday's emergency, but I don't understand how that led to this. Maybe someone higher up has been watching this place more closely than we thought." As Sarah prepared to leave Fort Bradley, she couldn't help but think about the young private, Wilson, whom she had treated the day before. His recovery would take months, but he would regain full use of his arm thanks to her quick assessment and intervention. That's what mattered, she realized. Not Colonel Harrison's petty prejudices or his attempts to undermine her career. What mattered was being there for the soldiers who needed medical care, providing them with the best treatment possible regardless of the circumstances. The transport to Walter Reed would arrive in 2 hours. As Sarah walked through the hospital one last time, she carried with her the lessons she had learned at Fort Bradley. Not all of them were pleasant, but they had made her stronger and more determined to succeed. She also carried with her a new understanding of how the military really worked. Sometimes the system failed, as it had with Colonel Harrison's biased treatment. But ultimately, competence and dedication were recognized and rewarded, even if it took time. The rain had stopped, and sunlight was beginning to break through the clouds as Sarah loaded her bags into the waiting vehicle. She looked back at Fort Bradley Military Medical Center one final time, then turned her face toward the future. She was Captain Sarah Martinez now, and she had work to do. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Martinez walked through the corridors of Walter Reed Medical Center with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the world. The prestigious hospital was everything she had hoped for and more state-of-the-art equipment, world-class physicians, and a patient population that included everyone from wounded combat veterans to high-ranking government officials. Her promotion and transfer had been the talk of military medical circles for weeks. It wasn't often that a junior nurse received such rapid advancement, especially one coming from what many considered a backwater posting like Fort Bradley. But Sarah had proven herself worthy of the opportunity. As the head trauma nurse in the emergency department, she managed a team of 12 nurses and coordinated care for the most critical cases that came through Walter Reed's doors. Her innovative protocols for rapid patient assessment had been adopted hospital-wide, and her training programs for new staff were being studied by other military medical facilities. "Captain Martinez," called Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, Walter Reed's chief of emergency medicine, as Sarah reviewed patient charts at the nurse's station. Dr. Hawkins was a formidable woman in her 50s who had earned her reputation treating battlefield casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan. "I need to speak with you about the VIP visit next week." Sarah looked up from the charts. "The Secretary of Defense." "Among others, we're expecting a full delegation from the Pentagon, including some foreign dignitaries. They want to tour our trauma facilities as part of a medical cooperation initiative. What do you need from me? Dr. Hawkins smiled. You'll be leading the medical presentation. Your trauma protocols are going to be the centerpiece of the demonstration. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. Ma'am, are you sure? I mean, wouldn't Dr. Patterson or Dr. Kim be more appropriate for that level of presentation? Sarah, you've revolutionized how we handle mass casualty events. Your assessment protocols have reduced patient processing time by 30% while improving outcomes across the board. You're exactly the right person for this. Before Sarah could respond, the trauma alert alarm began sounding. Both women immediately shifted into emergency mode. Multiple casualties incoming, announced the voice over the intercom. Military convoy accident, 6 wounded, ETA 12 minutes. Sarah quickly organized her team, assigning nurses to specific trauma bays and ensuring all equipment was ready. This had become second nature to her, the rapid coordination of resources and personnel that could mean the difference between life and death. The first ambulance arrived with its siren wailing. Sarah met the paramedics at the door, receiving the handoff report as they wheeled in the first patient. Sergeant First Class Williams, age 28, unconscious at the scene, suspected head trauma and internal bleeding, the paramedic reported rapidly. Vitals have been unstable during transport. Sarah quickly assessed the patient while directing him to Trauma Bay 1. Get me a full trauma panel and prep for emergency surgery, she called to her team, and page Dr. Patterson immediately. The next ambulance brought in a younger soldier with severe leg injuries. Sarah could see immediately that he was in shock, his face pale and his breathing rapid and shallow. Lance Corporal Thompson, age 21, crush injuries to both legs, possible fractures, the second paramedic reported. Trauma Bay 2, Sarah directed. Linda, I need you to start IV fluids and get him ready for X-ray. The remaining casualties arrived in quick succession, 2 with minor injuries that could be treated in the regular emergency department, and 2 with moderate trauma that required careful monitoring but weren't immediately life-threatening. For the next 3 hours, Sarah moved between trauma bays, coordinating care, assisting with surgeries, and ensuring that every patient received optimal treatment. Her team worked with the precision of a Swiss watch, each member knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. During a brief lull, Dr. Hawkins approached her. Impressive as always, how do you make it look so easy? It's not easy, Sarah replied, checking her notes. But good systems and good people make it manageable. Your systems, you mean? Sarah, you need to understand something. What you've accomplished here in 6 months typically takes officers years to achieve. You have a gift for this work. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. The message was from Jenny Brooks, her former colleague at Fort Bradley. Sarah, you need to know, Colonel Harrison is spreading rumors about you. Says your promotion was undeserved, that you slept your way to the top. It's getting back to people at Walter Reed. Thought you should hear it from a friend. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she read the message. Even after 6 months and all her success at Walter Reed, Harrison was still trying to undermine her career. Everything okay? Dr. Hawkins asked, noticing Sarah's expression. Sarah considered her options. She could tell Dr. Hawkins about the rumors, but that might give them more credibility. She could ignore them and hope they died out naturally, or she could address them head-on. Just some gossip from my previous assignment, Sarah said carefully. Nothing important. But Dr. Hawkins was too perceptive to buy that explanation. Sarah, in my experience, gossip that makes people look like they've seen a ghost is usually worth discussing. Sarah hesitated, then decided on honesty. My former commanding officer at Fort Bradley has apparently been spreading rumors about how I received my promotion, suggesting it wasn't based on merit. Dr. Hawkins's expression hardened. Colonel Harrison. Sarah was surprised that Dr. Hawkins knew the name. Yes, ma'am. I see. Well, that explains a few things. What do you mean? I've received some unusual inquiries about you over the past few weeks. Questions about your qualifications, your performance here, that sort of thing. I assumed they were routine background checks. Sarah felt sick. From whom? Various offices at the Pentagon. Nothing official, mind you. more like informal conversations at medical conferences and social events. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Harrison wasn't just spreading rumors locally. He was working to undermine her reputation throughout the military medical community. Dr. Hawkins, I want you to know that my promotion was based solely on... Stop right there, Dr. Hawkins interrupted firmly. I don't need to hear your defense because I don't believe the rumors for a second. I've worked with you for 6 months. I've seen your skills, your dedication, and your character. Anyone suggesting your success is based on anything other than exceptional ability is either ignorant or malicious. Thank you, ma'am, but if these rumors are circulating, then we'll deal with them. But first, tell me exactly what happened at Fort Bradley. For the next hour, Sarah recounted her entire experience under Harrison's command. She described the constant criticism, the impossible standards, the attempts to transfer her, and finally the morning when the 3 generals had arrived unexpectedly. Dr. Hawkins listened without interruption, her expression growing darker as the story progressed. Son of a bitch, Dr. Hawkins muttered when Sarah finished. Excuse my language, but that man is a disgrace to the uniform. The problem is, he's still in a position of authority, and apparently he has connections throughout the medical command. He does, unfortunately. Harrison comes from a military family going back several generations. His father was a general, his grandfather was a colonel. He's built a network of allies over the years. Sarah's heart sank further, so these rumors could actually damage my career. Not if I have anything to say about it. Sarah, there's something you need to understand about military politics. Men like Harrison rely on people being too intimidated to fight back. They count on their targets keeping quiet and hoping the problems will go away. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we go on the offensive. Next week's VIP visit isn't just about showcasing our trauma protocols. It's about showcasing you, your skills, your innovations, your leadership. Let your work speak for itself. But what if the rumors have already reached the visiting officials? Dr. Hawkins smiled grimly. Then we'll make sure they see the truth with their own eyes. The next week passed quickly. Sarah threw herself into preparing for the VIP visit, creating detailed presentations about her trauma protocols and organizing demonstrations that would showcase Walter Reed's capabilities. On the morning of the visit, she arrived early to do a final check of all the equipment and ensure her team was prepared. The trauma bay had been set up to demonstrate various scenarios, with volunteer patients from the hospital staff playing different types of casualties. Nervous? Asked Major Patricia Collins, one of Sarah's senior nurses. Terrified, Sarah admitted. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. Sarah, you've trained us all perfectly. We could do these demonstrations in our sleep. At precisely 900, the VIP delegation arrived. Sarah was surprised by the size of the group, not just the Secretary of Defense and Pentagon officials, but also representatives from several allied nations, including a British general and a Canadian medical officer. Leading the group was General Morrison, the same Surgeon General who had appeared in Colonel Harrison's office 6 months earlier. He spotted Sarah immediately and approached with a smile. Captain Martinez, it's good to see you again. I've been hearing excellent reports about your work here. Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be part of the Walter Reed team. I understand you'll be leading today's demonstration. Yes, sir. We've prepared presentations on rapid trauma assessment, mass casualty coordination, and our new patient flow protocols. General Morrison nodded approvingly. Excellent. I'm particularly interested in seeing your assessment protocols in action. As the group gathered in the main trauma bay, Sarah began her presentation. She explained the theoretical basis for her rapid assessment system, showed how it integrated with existing military medical doctrine, and demonstrated the practical applications using simulated patients. Her team performed flawlessly. Each nurse knew their role perfectly, and the demonstration flowed smoothly from one scenario to the next. Sarah found herself relaxing as she fell into her natural element, teaching and explaining the medical techniques that had become second nature to her. Now, Sarah said as they reached the culmination of the demonstration, we'll show you how these protocols work with a complex mass casualty scenario. The lights dimmed, and suddenly alarms began sounding throughout the trauma bay. Multiple casualties were wheeled in simultaneously, each presenting different types of injuries. Sarah moved quickly between them, demonstrating her triage process while explaining her decision-making to the observers. "The key," she said as she rapidly assessed a simulated head trauma case, "is to identify the most critical cases immediately while ensuring that moderate injuries don't become severe due to delayed treatment." Within minutes, she had categorized all the casualties, assigned appropriate care teams, and initiated treatment protocols. The entire process was smooth, efficient, and highly effective. When the demonstration concluded, the VIP delegation erupted in applause. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. It had gone better than she could have hoped. "Outstanding," declared the Secretary of Defense. "Absolutely outstanding. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need to see throughout military medicine." The British general approached Sarah directly. "Captain, I'm General Sir James Crawford. I wonder if we might arrange for some of our medical staff to train here. Your protocols would be invaluable for our trauma teams." Before Sarah could answer, she noticed a commotion near the entrance to the trauma bay. A familiar figure was arguing with one of the security guards, demanding to be let in. Colonel Harrison had somehow gained access to Walter Reed and was trying to insert himself into the VIP visit. "I'm a senior medical officer," she heard Harrison saying loudly. "I have every right to observe this demonstration." Dr. Hawkins quickly moved to intercept him, but Harrison pushed past her and approached the group of VIPs. His face was red with anger and what Sarah suspected might be alcohol. "General Morrison," Harrison called out, "I need to speak with you about this demonstration. There are things you need to know about the nurse who just presented." The entire group turned to look at Harrison. Sarah felt her stomach drop as she realized her worst fears were coming true. General Morrison's expression was cold as ice. "Colonel Harrison, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to provide you with important information about Captain Martinez. Her promotion was irregular, her qualifications are questionable, and—" "That's enough," General Morrison said sharply. "Security." But Harrison wasn't finished. "Sir, with respect, this woman has deceived the entire medical command. Her rapid advancement was based on factors other than medical competence." The silence in the trauma bay was deafening. Sarah felt every eye in the room focused on her, and she could practically hear her career crashing down around her. Then something unexpected happened. The British general stepped forward. "Colonel, I'm afraid you're quite wrong about that." Harrison blinked in confusion. "Sir." "I said you're wrong. I've just witnessed one of the most impressive medical demonstrations I've seen in 30 years of military service. Captain Martinez has clearly earned every bit of recognition she's received." The Canadian medical officer nodded in agreement. "The protocols we just observed represent a significant advancement in trauma care. This is precisely the kind of innovation that saves lives." The Secretary of Defense moved closer to Harrison. "Colonel, are you suggesting that what we just witnessed was somehow fraudulent?" Harrison's confidence began to waver. "Sir, I'm simply saying that rapid promotions often indicate—" "They indicate exceptional performance," General Morrison interrupted, "which is exactly what we've just seen demonstrated." Dr. Hawkins stepped forward. "Gentlemen, if I may, Colonel Harrison is Captain Martinez's former commanding officer. He was relieved of his position at Fort Bradley following an investigation into personnel management issues." The Secretary of Defense raised an eyebrow. "What kind of issues?" "Discrimination, harassment, and abuse of authority," General Morrison answered. "The investigation concluded that Colonel Harrison had created a hostile work environment for several outstanding medical personnel." Harrison's face went from red to pale white. "That investigation was biased. The conclusions were—" "The conclusions were that you were unfit for command," General Morrison said flatly. "And your presence here today, attempting to undermine a decorated officer during an official presentation, only reinforces those conclusions." Security guards had finally arrived and positioned themselves on either side of Harrison. "Colonel," the Secretary of Defense said, his voice carrying the weight of ultimate authority, "you will leave this facility immediately. Furthermore, you will report to the Pentagon tomorrow morning to discuss your future in military service." As Harrison was escorted out, still protesting his innocence, the VIP delegation turned their attention back to Sarah. She stood frozen, unsure how to react to the surreal scene that had just unfolded. General Morrison approached her with a reassuring smile. "Captain Martinez, please accept our apologies for that unfortunate interruption." "Sir, You handled that situation with remarkable composure. I'm impressed by your professionalism in the face of what must have been a very difficult moment." The British general stepped forward again. "Captain, I hope this incident won't prevent you from considering our training partnership proposal. Your expertise would be invaluable to our medical teams." Over the next hour, Sarah found herself in discussions with officials from multiple countries about implementing her protocols in their military medical systems. Far from damaging her reputation, Harrison's outburst had only served to highlight her professionalism and competence. As the VIP delegation prepared to leave, General Morrison pulled Sarah aside. "Captain, I want you to know that this incident will be thoroughly documented. Colonel Harrison will face additional disciplinary action for his behavior today." "Sir, I don't want to be vindictive." "This isn't about vindictiveness. It's about protecting other talented officers from the kind of harassment you endured. Men like Harrison damage the entire military medical system when they're allowed to act with impunity." "I understand, sir." "Good. Now I have a question for you. How would you feel about an assignment to the Pentagon? We need innovative thinkers like you helping to shape military medical policy at the highest levels." Sarah's eyes widened. "Sir, I'm honored, but I love working directly with patients." "You'd still have clinical responsibilities, but you'd also have the opportunity to influence medical care for every service member in the military. Think about it." As the VIP group departed, Dr. Hawkins approached Sarah with a huge grin. "Well, that was certainly more excitement than we typically have during VIP visits. I still can't believe Harrison showed up like that. How did he even get on base? He probably still has some connections who owed him favors, but after today, those connections will be worthless." "Do you think this will really be the end of it?" Dr. Hawkins nodded confidently. "Sarah, what happened here today was witnessed by some of the most powerful people in military medicine. Harrison's credibility is completely destroyed. More importantly, your reputation is now solidified at the highest levels." That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment reflecting on the extraordinary day. 6 months ago, she had been a junior nurse facing potential disciplinary action. Now she was being courted by international military medical programs and offered positions at the Pentagon. Her phone rang, and she saw Jenny Brooks's name on the display. "Sarah, I heard about what happened today. Is it true that Harrison showed up drunk at your VIP demonstration?" "I don't know if he was drunk, but he definitely wasn't thinking clearly." "Well, the word is already spreading throughout Fort Bradley. Apparently, he's being recalled to Washington for a board of inquiry. People are saying his career is over." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. She had never wanted to destroy Harrison's career, even after everything he had put her through. But she also recognized that his behavior toward her and other personnel had been unacceptable. "Jenny, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you know how those 3 generals found out about what was happening at Fort Bradley? I never understood how they knew to show up that morning." Jenny was quiet for a moment. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I think you deserve to know." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Rodriguez. After you had that confrontation with Harrison, Dr. Rodriguez made some phone calls. He has contacts throughout military medicine, and he was concerned about what was happening to you." Sarah was stunned. Dr. Rodriguez reported Harrison. "Not directly, but he made sure the right people knew that talented medical personnel were being mistreated. The review of the casualty response footage was real, but it wasn't random. Someone specifically requested that your performance be evaluated." "I had no idea." "Dr. Rodriguez believed in you, Sarah. He saw your potential and made sure others saw it too." After ending the call, Sarah sat in contemplation. The events of the past 6 months suddenly made more sense. Her rapid promotion hadn't been just about her performance during the emergency. It had been the result of dedicated mentors recognizing her potential and taking action to protect her career. The next morning brought official news. Colonel Harrison had been relieved of duty pending a formal board of inquiry. The charges against him included abuse of authority, harassment, and conduct unbecoming an officer. More importantly for Sarah, she received a formal invitation to visit the Pentagon and discuss potential assignments in medical policy development. The offer came with a promotion to major and the opportunity to influence military medical care on a global scale. As she walked through Walter Reed's corridors that morning, Sarah marveled at how completely her life had changed. The shy, uncertain nurse who had been intimidated by Harrison's bullying was gone. In her place was a confident medical officer ready to take on new challenges and responsibilities. Her trauma team greeted her with congratulations and good-natured teasing about her sudden fame in military medical circles. But what meant the most to her was the knowledge that her work was making a real difference in the lives of wounded soldiers. That afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Rodriguez had come to Walter Reed for a medical conference and stopped by to see her. "Sarah, I heard about yesterday's excitement. I'm proud of how you handled it." "Dr. Rodriguez, I understand I have you to thank for more than I realized." He smiled. "You don't owe me any thanks. You earned everything you've achieved through your own skills and dedication. But you made the phone calls that brought the generals to Fort Bradley. I simply made sure that people who could recognize talent were aware of what was happening. The rest was all you." As they talked, Sarah realized that her experience had taught her valuable lessons about leadership, mentorship, and standing up for what was right. These lessons would serve her well as she moved forward in her career. The military medical system wasn't perfect. The Harrison incident had proven that. But it was also capable of recognizing and rewarding genuine talent when the right people were paying attention. And Sarah Martinez intended to be one of those right people, ensuring that future talented medical personnel would have advocates when they needed them most. 2 years after the confrontation with Colonel Harrison, Major Sarah Martinez stood in the Pentagon's E-ring corridor, reviewing briefing materials for the most important meeting of her career. As the newly appointed Director of Combat Medical Innovation, she was about to present a comprehensive reform proposal that could reshape military medical care for the next generation. The position itself had been created specifically for her, a recognition that the traditional military medical hierarchy needed fresh thinking and innovative approaches. At 28, she was the youngest officer ever to hold such a position, and her appointment had generated considerable discussion throughout the medical command. "Major Martinez," a young lieutenant approached with obvious nervousness. "General Morrison is ready for you in Conference Room Alpha." Sarah gathered her materials and followed the lieutenant through corridors lined with portraits of military leaders spanning 2 centuries. The irony wasn't lost on her that 2 years ago, she had been facing potential dismissal from a small military hospital. Now she was about to brief the Joint Chiefs of Staff on revolutionary changes to military medical doctrine. Conference Room Alpha was intimidating by design. A large mahogany table surrounded by high-backed leather chairs, walls lined with flags and military insignia, and an atmosphere that spoke of momentous decisions made in this very space. Around the table sat some of the most powerful figures in military medicine, including General Morrison, the Surgeons General of all service branches, and several senior Pentagon officials. "Gentlemen," General Morrison announced as Sarah entered, "Major Martinez has prepared a comprehensive proposal for modernizing our medical response capabilities. Major, the floor is yours." Sarah activated the wall-mounted display and began her presentation. "Thank you, General Morrison. Over the past 18 months, I've conducted a comprehensive analysis of our current medical doctrine, examining everything from battlefield triage protocols to long-term care coordination." She clicked to her first slide, which showed statistics from recent conflicts. "Our current medical system, while effective, was designed for conventional warfare scenarios. Today's asymmetric conflicts, humanitarian missions, and multinational operations require more flexible approaches." The Air Force Surgeon General leaned forward. "Major, what specific changes are you proposing?" "3 major reforms, sir. First, the implementation of advanced trauma protocols that reduce critical patient processing time by up to 40%. Second, the creation of rapid deployment medical teams that can establish full surgical capabilities anywhere in the world within 12 hours. Third, the development of integrated training programs that prepare our medical personnel for the full spectrum of modern military operations." Sarah spent the next hour detailing each proposal, presenting data from pilot programs she had conducted and projections for implementation across all service branches. Her presentation was thorough, professional, and compelling, the product of months of careful research and analysis. The financial projections are particularly interesting, noted the Navy Surgeon General. You're suggesting these reforms will actually reduce overall medical costs while improving outcomes. Yes, sir. By front-loading training and equipment investments, we eliminate many of the inefficiencies in our current system. Faster treatment means better outcomes, which translates to reduced long-term care costs and faster return-to-duty rates. General Morrison nodded approvingly. Major, this is impressive work. However, I suspect implementation won't be as straightforward as your analysis suggests. You're absolutely right, sir. Change is always difficult, especially in an institution as large as the military. That's why I've included a detailed implementation timeline that phases in changes gradually, allowing for adjustment and refinement along the way. The discussion continued for another hour, with various officials asking detailed questions about logistics, training requirements, and integration with existing systems. Sarah answered each query confidently, drawing on her extensive preparation and practical experience. Finally, General Morrison stood. Major, this is outstanding work. We'll need time to review the full proposal, but I'm impressed by the thoroughness and practicality of your approach. Thank you, sir. However, I have one more request. We're organizing an international medical symposium next month. Representatives from 30 allied nations will be attending to discuss medical cooperation and standardization. I'd like you to present your protocols to the international community. Sarah felt a familiar flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. I'd be honored, sir. Excellent, but I should warn you, there will likely be some resistance. Not everyone in the international medical community is eager to adopt American innovations, particularly when they come from relatively junior officers. As Sarah left the Pentagon that afternoon, she reflected on how much her life had changed since her days at Fort Bradley. The confidence she now carried was hard-won, built through successful presentations, innovative programs, and the knowledge that her work was making a real difference in soldiers' lives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Hawkins at Walter Reed. Heard about your Pentagon presentation. Congratulations. Also, we have a situation here that requires your expertise. Can you consult on a complex case? Sarah immediately called Dr. Hawkins back. Despite her new policy role, she had maintained her clinical credentials and regularly assisted with challenging medical cases. Elizabeth, what's the situation? We have a soldier who was severely injured in a training accident. Multiple trauma, complex surgical needs, and some unusual complications. More importantly, his case is attracting high-level attention. His father is Congressman Williams, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I'll be there in an hour. Sarah drove to Walter Reed with a sense of anticipation. Policy work was important, but nothing compared to the immediate satisfaction of directly helping wounded soldiers. Her Pentagon position allowed her to influence medical care on a macro level, but cases like this reminded her why she had become a nurse in the first place. At Walter Reed, Dr. Hawkins briefed her on the case. Staff Sergeant Michael Williams, 26 years old, had suffered severe injuries during a live-fire exercise when an equipment malfunction caused an explosion. He had been at Walter Reed for 2 weeks, and while his life was no longer in danger, his recovery was complicated by nerve damage that could result in permanent disability. The challenge, Dr. Hawkins explained as they walked toward the patient's room, is that conventional treatment protocols aren't working. We need to try some innovative approaches, but his family is resistant to experimental procedures. Have you explained the alternatives? That's the problem. With conventional treatment, he's looking at significant permanent disability. But his father is convinced that military medicine is somehow inferior to civilian care. He's threatening to transfer Michael to Johns Hopkins. Sarah nodded, understanding the political implications. Congressman Williams had significant influence over military medical budgets. If his son received poor care at Walter Reed, it could have repercussions throughout the military medical system. They reached the patient's room, where a small crowd was gathered outside. Sarah recognized Congressman Williams immediately. A tall, silver-haired man in his 60s who carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to having his demands met immediately. "Congressman Williams," Dr. Hawkins said, "I'd like you to meet Major Martinez. She's one of our top trauma specialists and has consulted on cases like your son's." Williams shook Sarah's hand but remained skeptical. "Major, I appreciate your willingness to help, but I'm not convinced military medicine can provide the level of care my son needs." "I understand your concerns, sir. May I examine your son and review his medical records? Then I can give you my honest assessment of his treatment options." For the next hour, Sarah conducted a thorough examination and reviewed all of Michael's medical records. The case was indeed complex. The nerve damage was extensive, and conventional approaches had limited potential for success. However, Sarah had seen similar cases before and had ideas about alternative treatment protocols. She found Congressman Williams in the family consultation room, looking exhausted and worried. "Congressman, I've completed my evaluation. Your son's injuries are serious, but I believe we can achieve significantly better outcomes than conventional protocols would suggest." Williams looked up hopefully. "How?" "There are some innovative surgical techniques and rehabilitation protocols that we've been developing for cases exactly like this. They're not experimental. We've used them successfully in similar cases, but they're not yet part of standard medical doctrine." "What kind of success rates are we talking about?" Sarah pulled out her tablet and showed him data from previous cases. "With conventional treatment, your son is looking at perhaps 60% function in his affected limbs. With the advanced protocols, we've achieved 90% or better function in most cases." Williams studied the data carefully. "Why aren't these advanced protocols the standard treatment?" "Because implementing new medical procedures in the military requires extensive testing, approval processes, and training programs. It can take years for innovations to become standard practice." "That's ridiculous. If these procedures work better, why aren't they available to all soldiers?" "Actually, sir, that's something I'm working to change. I've just proposed reforms to the Joint Chiefs that would accelerate the adoption of proven medical innovations." Williams looked at her with new interest. "You're involved in medical policy?" "Yes, sir. I'm the Director of Combat Medical Innovation. My job is to identify and implement improvements to military medical care." For the next hour, Sarah explained her reform proposals and how they would address exactly the kind of situation they were facing with Michael's care. Williams listened intently, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and oversight mechanisms. "Major, I have to say, this is the first time anyone has given me straight answers about my son's care. Most of the doctors here seem more interested in covering their asses than providing optimal treatment." "Sir, I think you'll find that most military medical personnel are dedicated professionals who genuinely want the best for their patients. The challenge is that our current system sometimes prevents them from using the most effective treatments available." "What would you need to provide these advanced protocols for Michael?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Permission to deviate from standard protocols, access to specialized equipment, and a surgical team trained in the advanced techniques." "Done. What else?" "Actually, sir, there's something else you could do that would help not just your son, but thousands of other soldiers." Williams raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Support the medical reform proposals I'm presenting to the Joint Chiefs. Your influence could help accelerate the approval process and make these advanced treatments available to all wounded soldiers." Williams sat back in his chair, processing the request. "You're asking me to use my son's situation to advance your policy agenda." "No, sir. I'm suggesting that your son's situation demonstrates why these reforms are necessary. The advanced treatment protocols that could help Michael should be available to every wounded soldier, not just those whose fathers happen to be congressmen." The honesty of her response seemed to impress Williams. "Major, I like your approach. Yes, I'll support your reforms, but I want to guarantee that my son will receive the best possible care." "Sir, you have my personal commitment that your son will receive the most advanced care available anywhere in the world." The surgery was scheduled for the following week, giving Sarah time to assemble the optimal surgical team and prepare the specialized equipment needed for the advanced procedures. She also used the time to brief Congressman Williams on the broader implications of military medical reform. The day of the surgery, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of performing clinical work while managing significant political pressure. The operation was complex, requiring precise nerve repair techniques and innovative approaches to tissue reconstruction. Dr. Hawkins assisted, along with two other surgeons who had been trained in the advanced protocols. The procedure took 6 hours, but everything went according to plan. The nerve repairs were successful, and the reconstruction work exceeded even Sarah's optimistic projections. In the recovery room, Congressman Williams waited anxiously for news. "The surgery was completely successful," Sarah reported. "Your son should recover full function in his affected limbs. The rehabilitation will take several months, but the prognosis is excellent." Williams's relief was evident. "Major, I don't know how to thank you. Help me get these reforms approved, sir. Make sure other families don't have to go through what you've experienced." "You have my word." 2 weeks later, Sarah received a call from General Morrison. "Major, I have some news about your reform proposals." "Yes, sir." "They've been approved for immediate implementation. Congratulations, you just revolutionized military medical care." Sarah was stunned. The approval process was supposed to take months, possibly years. "Sir, how did this happen so quickly?" "Let's just say you have some influential supporters in Congress. Congressman Williams has been making calls to everyone he knows, pushing for rapid approval of your proposals." That afternoon, Sarah received another call, this one from an unexpected source. "Major Martinez, this is Colonel Harrison." Sarah nearly dropped the phone. She hadn't heard from Harrison since his disgraceful appearance at Walter Reed 2 years earlier. "Colonel Harrison, this is unexpected." "Major, I'm calling to apologize. I owe you that much." Sarah was speechless. Harrison's voice sounded different, older, humbler, lacking the arrogant confidence she remembered. "I've had 2 years to think about my behavior toward you at Fort Bradley. I was wrong, and I let personal prejudices cloud my professional judgment." "Colonel, I appreciate." "Please let me finish. I've been watching your career from a distance, and I'm genuinely impressed by what you've accomplished. Your reforms are exactly what military medicine needs." "Thank you. I also want you to know that I'm retiring from active duty next month. My behavior toward you and other personnel was unacceptable, and it's time for me to step aside for younger, more progressive leadership." After the call ended, Sarah sat in her Pentagon office reflecting on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. 5 years earlier, she had been a young nurse struggling to prove herself in a hostile environment. Now she was implementing reforms that would affect military medical care for decades to come. More importantly, she had learned valuable lessons about leadership, perseverance, and the importance of standing up for what was right, even in the face of powerful opposition. Her phone buzzed with a message from Michael Williams, Congressman Williams's son. "Major Martinez wanted you to know I'm back on full duty. Doctors say my recovery exceeded all expectations. Thank you for giving me my life back." That evening, Sarah attended a reception at the Pentagon honoring the implementation of her medical reforms. The event was attended by senior military officials, congressional representatives, and medical professionals from around the world. General Morrison approached her with a smile. "Major, I have one more surprise for you." "Sir?" "The International Medical Symposium I mentioned. It's been expanded. Your protocols are being adopted not just by American forces, but by 23 allied nations. You've literally changed the face of international military medicine." As Sarah mingled with guests at the reception, she was struck by how many people approached her to share stories of how her innovations had affected their work. Doctors described improved patient outcomes, nurses talked about more efficient protocols, and administrators discussed reduced costs and better resource allocation. But the most meaningful conversation came from a young captain who introduced herself as Lisa Chen. "Major Martinez, I'm a nurse at Landstuhl Medical Center in Germany. I wanted to thank you for your work." "Thank you, Captain. How have the new protocols affected your operations?" "They've been transformative. But more than that, your story has been inspirational to those of us who sometimes feel like outsiders in the military medical system." Sarah understood immediately what Captain Chen meant. You faced some challenges, similar to what you experienced, though not as severe. But knowing that you overcame those obstacles and went on to achieve so much has given me the confidence to keep pushing for what's right. As the reception continued, Sarah realized that her greatest accomplishment wasn't the medical innovations or the policy reforms. It was the knowledge that her example was helping other talented medical professionals navigate their own challenges and achieve their potential. The young nurse who had once been intimidated by a bullying colonel was gone. In her place stood a confident leader ready to continue pushing for positive change in military medicine. And this was just the beginning. There were more reforms to implement, more innovations to develop, and more talented personnel to mentor and support. Sarah Martinez had found her calling, and she was just getting started. 3 years later, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Medical Innovation Center at Fort Sam Houston, watching the sunrise over what would become the future of military medicine. At 31, she was the youngest officer ever to command such a facility, and the center itself represented the culmination of her years of reform efforts. The Medical Innovation Center was her brainchild, a unique facility that combined cutting-edge research, advanced training programs, and real-world clinical applications. It served as both a treatment center for complex cases and a proving ground for medical innovations that would eventually be deployed throughout the military medical system. Colonel Martinez, Lieutenant Colonel David Kim, her deputy director, approached with the morning briefing materials. We have several items that require your attention before the dedication ceremony. Sarah turned from the window, her mind shifting from contemplative to operational mode. Today's ceremony would officially open the center to its full capacity, with representatives from all service branches, international allies, and senior Pentagon officials in attendance. What's our status, David? All systems are operational. The trauma simulation labs are ready for demonstration, the research teams have prepared their presentations, and the international observers are particularly interested in seeing our rapid deployment medical units in action. Sarah nodded, reviewing the schedule on her tablet. Any last-minute issues I should know about? Just one. We've received a request from the media to interview you about your journey from Fort Bradley to here. Specifically, they want to discuss how you overcame early career obstacles to reach your current position. Sarah paused. Over the years, she had generally avoided discussing her experience with Colonel Harrison and the challenges she faced as a young nurse. Her preference was to let her work speak for itself rather than dwelling on past conflicts. I'll consider it. For now, let's focus on making sure today's demonstration goes smoothly. The next few hours were a whirlwind of final preparations. Sarah moved through the various sections of the center, checking on research projects, observing training exercises, and ensuring that everything was ready for the formal dedication. The Medical Innovation Center was impressive by any measure. It housed 12 specialized research laboratories, advanced surgical suites equipped with the latest technology, simulation facilities that could replicate any battlefield medical scenario, and classrooms designed for both in-person and virtual training programs. More importantly, it represented a fundamental shift in how the military approached medical innovation. Instead of waiting years for new procedures to work their way through bureaucratic approval processes, the center could test, refine, and deploy medical innovations in months rather than years. Colonel, Captain Lisa Chen, the young nurse Sarah had met at the Pentagon reception years earlier, approached with obvious excitement. The rapid deployment teams are ready for the demonstration. We've set up a complex mass casualty scenario that will showcase all of our new protocols. Sarah smiled, pleased to see how Lisa had developed into a confident medical leader. Excellent. How are the international observers reacting to what they've seen so far? They're impressed. The British team is particularly interested in our trauma protocols, and the Canadians want to discuss implementing our training programs. But I think the biggest surprise is the reaction from some of our own senior officers. What do you mean? There are several generals here who seem genuinely shocked by what we've accomplished. I overheard General Patterson telling someone that he didn't realize American military medicine had advanced this far. Sarah found that both encouraging and concerning. It's good that they're impressed, but it worries me that senior leadership wasn't fully aware of our progress. I think that's about to change. After today's demonstrations, everyone will understand what we're capable of. The dedication ceremony began at 1,000 hours with a formal parade of military units representing all branches of service. Sarah stood on the reviewing platform alongside General Morrison, now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Secretary of Defense Patricia Wells, who had taken office 6 months earlier. Colonel Martinez, Secretary Wells said during a quiet moment between speeches, I've been briefing myself on your work here. This facility represents exactly the kind of innovation we need throughout the Department of Defense. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We're proud of what we've accomplished. I understand you faced some challenges along the way. Sarah glanced at General Morrison, wondering what he had shared with the new secretary. Every significant change encounters resistance, ma'am. The key is maintaining focus on the ultimate goal, better care for our service members. Spoken like a true leader, I'm looking forward to seeing your demonstrations. The first demonstration showcased the center's rapid deployment capabilities. Within minutes of receiving an alert, medical teams assembled complete surgical suites in field conditions, demonstrating how advanced medical care could be delivered anywhere in the world within hours of a crisis. The scenario involved a simulated terrorist attack on an embassy, with multiple casualties requiring immediate surgical intervention. Sarah narrated the demonstration, explaining how their protocols had revolutionized the military's ability to respond to medical emergencies in hostile environments. The key innovation, she explained to the assembled dignitaries, is our modular approach to medical equipment and personnel. Instead of deploying large, cumbersome medical units, we can rapidly assemble exactly the capabilities needed for each specific situation. The demonstration was flawless. Medical teams worked with choreographed precision, setting up surgical suites, triaging casualties, and performing complex procedures under simulated combat conditions. The entire operation was completed in less than 2 hours, with all simulated casualties successfully treated. General Patterson, one of the senior officers Lisa had mentioned, approached Sarah after the demonstration. Colonel, I owe you an apology. Sir, I was skeptical about your proposals when they first came through channels. I thought they were too ambitious, too expensive, and too risky. I was wrong on all counts. Thank you, General. I understand the skepticism. We were proposing significant changes to established systems. More than that, you were challenging some fundamental assumptions about how military medicine should work. That takes courage, especially for a junior officer. As the day progressed, similar conversations occurred throughout the center. Senior officers who had initially resisted Sarah's reforms were now seeing their practical applications and measurable benefits. During lunch, Sarah found herself seated next to Dr. James Reed, a civilian researcher who had been following her work for several years. Colonel, I wanted to congratulate you on what you've accomplished here. This facility represents a quantum leap forward in military medical capabilities. Thank you, Dr. Reed. We're particularly proud of the research partnerships we've developed with civilian institutions. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. I've been authorized by the National Institutes of Health to propose a formal partnership between the Medical Innovation Center and our trauma research programs. Sarah was intrigued. What kind of partnership? Shared research projects, personnel exchanges, and joint funding for medical innovations that could benefit both military and civilian populations. Your rapid deployment protocols, for example, could revolutionize disaster response capabilities. I'm very interested. Let's schedule a detailed discussion after today's events. The afternoon demonstrations focused on the center's training capabilities. International observers watched as American medical personnel worked alongside their allied counterparts, practicing complex procedures using advanced simulation technology. Sarah was particularly proud of this aspect of the center's work. By training allied medical personnel alongside American troops, they were creating standardized protocols that would improve medical care across all participating nations. Colonel Martinez approached a British general. I'm General Sir Michael Thompson. I wanted to discuss the possibility of establishing a similar facility in the United Kingdom. That's an interesting idea, General. What did you have in mind? A sister facility that could serve European forces while maintaining close coordination with your center here. We could share research, exchange personnel, and coordinate on global medical innovations. The conversation was interrupted by an aide who approached with obvious urgency. Colonel, there's been a real emergency. Multiple casualties from a training accident at Fort Hood. They're requesting immediate deployment of one of our rapid response teams. Sarah's mind immediately shifted to operational mode. How many casualties and what type of injuries? 15 wounded, at least 3 critical. Helicopter crash during a night training exercise. Alert Team Alpha for immediate deployment. Have them airborne within 30 minutes. Sarah turned to the assembled dignitaries. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we have a real-world emergency that requires our immediate attention. You're welcome to observe our actual deployment protocols if you wish. For the next hour, the VIPs watched as the Medical Innovation Center transformed from a demonstration facility into an active crisis response operation. The rapid deployment team assembled their equipment, boarded transport aircraft, and departed for Fort Hood with impressive efficiency. Sarah coordinated the response from the center's command facility, maintaining communication with the deployed team and providing real-time consultation on complex cases. Colonel, General Morrison observed, this is exactly what military medicine should look like: innovative, responsive, and effective. The deployed team successfully treated all casualties, with the 3 critical cases stabilized and transported to appropriate facilities for long-term care. What would have been a potential tragedy with multiple fatalities became a successful rescue operation with no loss of life. As evening approached and the VIP delegation prepared to depart, Secretary Wells pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. Colonel, I've been impressed by everything I've seen today, but I'm even more impressed by how you handled the real emergency this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Emergency response is what we're designed for. I have a proposition for you. I'm creating a new position in my office, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Medical Innovation. I want someone who understands both the practical and policy aspects of military medicine. Sarah was stunned. Madam Secretary, I'm honored, but I love my current assignment. I understand, but think about the broader impact you could have. From the Pentagon, you could influence medical policy not just for the military, but for the entire federal government. VA hospitals, disaster response agencies, international medical cooperation, all of it. May I have some time to consider it? Of course, but Sarah, may I call you Sarah? You've demonstrated that you have the vision and leadership skills to operate at the highest levels of government. Don't let this opportunity pass by. That evening, Sarah walked through the Medical Innovation Center after the crowds had departed. The facility was quiet now, but she could feel the energy of innovation and purpose that filled the building. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Colonel Martinez, this is Staff Sergeant Williams, Congressman Williams's son. I wanted you to know that I'm now serving as a medical instructor at Fort Sam Houston. I hope to work with your center. Thank you for changing my life. Sarah smiled, remembering the young soldier whose complex surgery had helped convince his father to support her medical reforms. It was gratifying to know that her work had continuing impact on individual lives. Another message arrived, this one from Dr. Rodriguez, her former mentor at Fort Bradley. Sarah watched the news coverage of today's ceremony, incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. You've exceeded even my highest expectations for your career. As she prepared to leave the center, Sarah reflected on Secretary Wells's offer. The position would be a significant step forward in her career and would provide opportunities to influence medical policy on a scale she had never imagined. But it would also mean leaving direct patient care behind, moving further from the hands-on medical work that had originally drawn her to nursing. Her contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Lisa Chen, who had stayed late to complete post-event documentation. Colonel, how are you feeling about today? Proud, exhausted, and overwhelmed by new opportunities. Lisa sensed there was more to the story. Anything you want to talk about? Sarah considered sharing the Pentagon offer, then decided to keep it private for now. Just thinking about how much things have changed since my early days in the military. You mean Fort Bradley? Sarah nodded. Sometimes I can barely remember that nervous young nurse who was so intimidated by Colonel Harrison. I think that experience shaped who you became as a leader. You understand what it's like to face unfair treatment, so you work harder to ensure other people don't have to go through the same thing. Perhaps, but I sometimes wonder if I should have stood up to Harrison sooner, been more assertive from the beginning. With respect, Colonel, I think your approach was perfect. You proved your competence first, built allies, and only confronted him when you had the strength to win. That's not weakness, that's strategic thinking. As they walked toward the parking lot, Sarah realized that Lisa was right. Her experience with Harrison had indeed shaped her leadership style, teaching her the importance of building coalition support and demonstrating competence before challenging established authority. More importantly, it had given her empathy for other young medical personnel facing similar challenges. The Medical Innovation Center wasn't just about advancing medical technology. It was also about creating an environment where talented people could thrive regardless of their background or personal connections. The next morning, Sarah received a call from General Morrison. "Sarah, I understand Secretary Wells made you an offer yesterday." "Yes, sir, I'm still considering it. I want you to know that while we'd hate to lose you from the military medical system, this could be an incredible opportunity to expand your influence." "I'm torn, sir. I love what I'm doing here." "I understand. But consider this. From the Pentagon, you could establish medical innovation centers like this one throughout the federal government. Imagine the impact you could have on veterans' care, disaster response, even civilian medical research." After ending the call, Sarah sat in her office contemplating the decision. Through her window, she could see medical personnel conducting training exercises, researchers working in laboratories, and the constant activity of an organization dedicated to saving lives and advancing medical care. The choice before her represented more than just a career decision. It was about determining how she could have the greatest possible impact on medical care for service members and civilians alike. Her intercom buzzed with an incoming call. "Colonel, I have Dr. Reed from NIH on line 1. He says it's about the partnership proposal you discussed yesterday." As Sarah reached for the phone, she realized that regardless of whether she accepted the Pentagon position, her work was expanding beyond the walls of any single facility. The medical innovations developed here were already spreading throughout the military and beginning to influence civilian medical care as well. The scared young nurse from Fort Bradley was truly gone now, replaced by a confident leader ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. And those challenges, she suspected, were just beginning. 5 years after accepting the position as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Medical Innovation, Sarah Martinez sat in her Pentagon office reviewing intelligence reports that would shape the future of global medical response. At 36, she had become one of the most influential figures in government medical policy, overseeing programs that affected not just military medicine, but disaster response, veteran care, and international medical cooperation efforts. The morning briefing materials spread across her desk painted a concerning picture. A new infectious disease outbreak had emerged in Southeast Asia, threatening to become a global pandemic. Traditional response protocols were proving inadequate, and World Health Organizations were struggling to coordinate effective countermeasures. "Madam Secretary," her Chief of Staff, Colonel Patricia Hayes, entered with an urgent expression. "The President has called an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. You're requested to attend as the medical advisor." Sarah quickly gathered the relevant briefing materials. "What's the latest intelligence on the outbreak?" "It's spreading faster than initial models predicted. The WHO is requesting assistance from all member nations, and there's talk of implementing the international medical cooperation protocols you developed." As they walked toward the White House, Sarah reflected on how the medical innovation network she had championed over the past several years were now being put to their ultimate test. The rapid deployment capabilities, international training programs, and standardized protocols that had once seemed like ambitious theoretical concepts were about to face real-world validation on a global scale. The National Security Council meeting was attended by the highest levels of